Modern heavyweight might be the worst division in UFC history. The weight class used to be one of the promotion's crown jewels, but lack of new talent and a strange refusal by the UFC to push or protect its own stars has left the weight class a shell of what it once was.
What is the point of keeping the heavyweight division around unless there's an attempt to repair it?
So how did the baddest man on the planet go from the UFC's most iconic title to its most meaningless belt? And could all of this be the UFC's own undoing? After the UFC acquired Pride in 2007, heavyweight instantly became the promotion's showcase division. It was stacked with talent. Suddenly, homegrown stars like Randy Couture, Arlovsky, and Frank Mir were being thrown into the mix with the likes of Antonio Nogueira and Mirko Cro Cop. To make things even more exciting for the fans, Brock Lesnar, the biggest name to ever compete in MMA at the time, elevated the division even further.
Even Bellator 10 years ago was better than this current heavyweight division in the UFC. When I fought, it was the who's who, man. I mean, it was murderer's row. Now it's just a shell of itself, and it doesn't have to be.
Acquiring Pride was a pretty big deal at the time. Sure, MMA was not as popular as it is today, but the UFC's big pull at the time was the fact that it became the central hub for fighting altogether. While boxing fans had to split their attention across different promoters and organizations, fight fans only needed to look at the UFC champion to know who the baddest man on the planet was.
And I'll have to disagree with something that Mr. Sakakibara said earlier. He was talking about all the other MMA organizations that are coming up and climbing up the ladder. I laugh at that. I think they're all a joke. The only two companies in this world that matter are the UFC and Pride.
That clarity gave the UFC a unique advantage. It could market its heavyweight champion as the definitive king of combat sports. And while the UFC never managed to sign Fedor, the sheer talent that made its way into the octagon was more than enough to elevate heavyweight into the sport's centerpiece. And soon enough, the new era of fighters began to emerge. Junior Dos Santos brought elite boxing, Shane Carwin carried terrifying power, and Cain Velasquez introduced a pace and wrestling style that heavyweight had never seen before.
His cardio it doesn't make sense. It didn't make sense. He had cardio like a flyweight, and he was 240 pounds. And, you know, when he f***ed up Brock Lesnar, when he f***ed up Ben Rothwell.
How about JDS in the rematch?
Oh, yeah,
He's
dude.
like, oh, yeah, you clipped me behind the ear. Watch this. And took years off JDS's. JDS was never the same.
For sure, yeah. I mean, and then the other rematch.
Dude.
Yeah, he battered him. It's horrific. What Cain used to do to people was hit them with a pace that no other human being that's a heavyweight other than Cain Velasquez could maintain.
Over a decade ago, Velasquez was able to go to town on his opponents for 5 rounds without a glimpse of fatigue. Fast forward to today, most heavyweights on the roster seem to gas out after 5 minutes inside the cage. And even back then, the talent seemed far deeper than today. Lesnar and Velasquez both brought NCAA-level wrestling credentials. Cro Cop and Mark Hunt added elite striking pedigree, and world-class grapplers like Nogueira and Gabriel Gonzaga rounded out the division with dangerous submission skills. The Pride merger cemented the UFC as the place for the best heavyweights in the world, but soon, new names would reshape the division all over again. Only a few years later, the UFC took another major bite out of the 240-pound talent pool in the market. In 2011, Zuffa officially purchased its biggest competitor at the time.
UFC has purchased Strikeforce. Is that true?
That is true. Yeah, like I say to you guys all the time, every year we take this thing to another level, and some of the deals that we're working on now, international and all the other things, and obviously, you know, acquiring Strikeforce now.
The merger proved to be as big as the Pride acquisition, and even more fruitful. Strikeforce fighters went on to shape the division for years, creating an even more stacked weight class. 2 of Strikeforce's fighters, Daniel Cormier and Fabricio Werdum, would go on to become UFC heavyweight champions. In fact, their success showed just how deep the Strikeforce roster really was. Others like Alistair Overeem and Antonio Bigfoot Silva added memorable moments and dangerous matchups to the division.
They brought a slew of guys over when they took over Strikeforce. It was almost like one of the greatest moments and I've always considered it to be one of the greatest moments in sports history, in this sport history. in the sport of MMA's history.
There's good reason to believe that the years following the Strikeforce acquisition resulted in the greatest era of heavyweight talent at the UFC. On top of the fighters from the previous era, the division was seeing the rise of soon-to-be legends like Stipe Miocic as well. After taking the belt from Werdum, Miocic went on to become the champion with the most title defenses in UFC heavyweight history. In the big leagues, one punch can change the course of a fight, so for a fighter to be able to streak several defenses together, it speaks to a rare type of dominance.
Stipe is the pound-for-pound consensus best heavyweight ever. I mean, the guy has defended the title more than anybody. You look at his resume, it's impeccable. Knocks out Junior Dos Santos, knocks out Overeem, beats Francis Ngannou, who's everybody's scared of.
And when Daniel Cormier moved back to heavyweight, he and Stipe clashed in the most technical rivalry the division has ever seen. DC got the better of Miocic in their first bout, knocking him out in the first round. The two would go on to fight twice more, with Stipe taking back the belt in the rematch and then sealing the trilogy in the third fight. Both fighters were skilled in all aspects of the game, from wrestling to boxing. Cormier and Miocic could do it all.
This might be the greatest heavyweight fight of all time. I really believe that. It was really outstanding.
As great as that era was, all things come to an end. To make things worse, the entire division was already showing signs of thinning out. After most of the stacked talent in the heavyweight division left, the UFC struggled to bring in new fighters at the same level. Former greats like Velasquez and Dos Santos were already far too old, and while Cormier and Stipe seemed like they stood tall above the rest, their days were also counted. Cormier outright retired after the third fight with Stipe, but while the champion kept his place for a while longer, an old foe was ready to step back in and shift the balance of the division, and the UFC was all in for it. Francis Ngannou's rise in the UFC rankings was nothing short of spectacular. When he came up to the scene, the Cameroonian displayed a type of power we haven't really seen yet. After joining in 2015, Francis would go on to knock out everyone in front of him. And in his first run at the title, none of his opponents made it past the second round. At the time, it truly felt like the UFC had found its own version of Mike Tyson in the making.
We've had some trouble getting him a fight, but once we keep this guy active and you see him doing that to all the big stars that you know, yeah, I think this guy's going to be a rock star globally.
However, when he came up to face Stipe Miocic for the first time, all the hype faced a brick wall. Ngannou had all the power in the world, but when it came to face someone as well-rounded and experienced as Stipe, he was outclassed. Despite all the push from the UFC to create its next big star, the old guard of heavyweights held firm. Stipe would go on to have the Cormier trilogy, while Francis had to go back to the drawing board, working on the gaps in his game before making another run at the belt.
He very eloquently said everything very honestly and open about what he did wrong in this fight. He said that he just exerted too much energy in the first two rounds. Maybe where he had put together a streak of quick finishes, he just kind of, that went a little natural to him. But so pacing, what you have to do, the type of conditioning you need to do for a 5-round fight, and obviously the dude needs to work on his wrestling game.
But the story was far from over. Francis came back to the winning column after losing a snooze fest to Derek Lewis. From there, however, he hit his stride. Ngannou scored all first-round knockouts in his next 4 fights, making easy work of guys like JDS, Velasquez, and Curtis Blades in the process. After 3 years, he was finally back in title contention, ready to avenge his loss against Stipe. And things couldn't have gone better for him and for the UFC.
Ngannou lands a jab and Stipe goes down at heavyweight, but I know he was already concussed in the fight, and then down goes Stipe Miocic with a jab in the second round. That's the kind of power that Ngannou has. He landed a bunch of overhands, uppercuts in the bout, and Stipe was eating all of them, but it's the ones you don't see that put you down. And especially when a guy hits like Ngannou, if you don't see that shot coming and it's by Ngannou, the power is just going to be too much for you to handle.
Ngannou finally became a champion after knocking out Stipe in the second round. And this version of Francis that showed up at UFC truly looked like one of the most formidable heavyweights we have ever seen. Not only did he possess extreme power, but now he seemed well-versed in all areas of the game. The organization looked ready to bet on having Ngannou as their champion for a while. At the post-fight press conference, Dana White seemed as happy and red as ever.
If I'm Jon Jones and I'm home watching this fight, I start moving to 85.
You think that's a fight that you'd like to put together next? I mean, I know we don't matchmake, but that sure does seem exciting.
Listen, I could sit here all day and tell you, what show me the money mean? I tell you guys this all the time. If you can say you want to fight somebody, but do you really want to?
In retrospect, it's crazy to see Dana siding with Ngannou and throwing Jon Jones under the bus, especially considering what happened next. While all of that was happening, Jon Jones had been expressing interest in moving up a division to challenge for the 240-pound title.
What are the chances, if all goes well on February 8th, that your next fight is at heavyweight?
There's a really good chance.
Really?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Have you set your mind to that? Do you feel like there's nothing left at 205?
Yeah, I feel like I really want to fight Stipe Miocic.
Meanwhile, Ngannou's contract with the UFC was nearing its end, with just one fight left on the deal. Perhaps knowing how much he meant to the division, Ngannou pushed for more than just money to re-sign with the UFC. He asked for the freedom to box outside the UFC while still being champion, and he also allegedly pushed for broader changes like fighter health insurance and better pay guarantees. But the world's leading MMA organization doesn't bend over easily. Francis headed to what would be his first title defense and his last fight for the UFC. He confirmed his evolution into a well-rounded fighter by out-wrestling Cyril Gane. From this moment, the heavyweight division was never quite the same.
I've told you guys this before. If you don't want to be here, you don't have to be here. I think Francis is in a place right now where he doesn't want to take a lot of risk. Feels like he's in a good position where he could fight lesser opponents and make more money. So we're gonna let him do that. We're gonna release him from his contract. We're gonna give up our right to match, and he can go wherever he wants and do whatever he wants.
Letting Francis go became the straw that broke the camel's back. Sure, he was difficult to deal with, but he was also the star of the division. Having him on board for the next few years would have meant tons of new possibilities and exciting matchups. Ngannou moved on to sign with the PFL. He also gained the ability to venture into boxing, making close to $30 million in just 2 fights, which further exposed the UFC's pay disparity. After he left, the division was left with a void it still hasn't filled. Jon Jones finally decided to move up shortly after Ngannou left the organization. When he faced Gane for the vacant title, however, the move didn't feel as special. Jones, one of the best MMA grapplers we've ever seen, easily tapped out the Frenchman in only a few minutes.
Oh, tapped him out.
Oh my God.
It's over?
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Boy, he mopped the floor with that boy. He didn't get touched.
Did not bet.
Everybody
Everybody
watching
watching
Rust,
did
the
not
long
bet.
layoff. He's too athletic. He went, say less. Check this out. There's your world champ, heavyweight world champ.
Next up, Jones was supposed to fight a semi-retired, on a 3-year time-off Stipe Miocic. The fight would have undoubtedly been great if it happened 5 years prior. But at that specific point in time, the fight seemed more of a tune-up for Jon than anything else. And while all of that was happening, the rest of the division remained pretty active. Aspinall, Blades, Volkov, and Pavlovich were all making noise. When the original scheduled date for Jones vs. Miocic got postponed due to injury, the UFC put together an interim title fight between Aspinall and Pavlovich. The bout was explosive but brief. Aspinall stunned Pavlovich with his speed and finished him in the first round. Now, the division had 2 belts. And perhaps matchmakers didn't think that through all that much. With an official interim champion, it wouldn't make any sense to go on with the Stipe fight. But they went on with it nonetheless.
When you say Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall, does that mean we're saying that Stipe doesn't deserve that fight? I mean, this fight was supposed to happen. Jon's got injured, and Stipe has paid his dues and has been here forever. And my job is to make the biggest fights that I can possibly make. And I know everybody wants to see Aspinall, but those 2 are going to fight, and whoever wins, hopefully Aspinall is next, and they're going to give Aspinall the opportunities that they got when they were in their young careers to get to where they are today.
Jones and Stipe fought. Both of them retired afterwards, and fans never got to see the unification bout that would have crowned a true, undisputed heavyweight king. Aspinall immediately became the undisputed champion, and the division tried to move onward. At his very first title defense, however, disaster would once again strike the heavyweight class.
How is he not disqualified off that?
It's outrageous. People start booing me like it's my fault. Get double faults behind me.
The division has seemingly been cursed. Aspinall and Cyril Gane faced each other at UFC 321, but the fight was nothing short of lackluster. Less than 5 minutes in, the fight was declared a non-contest after Gane poked Aspinall's eyes. What's more surprising, however, was the reaction by the likes of Dana White.
He had Tom bloodied up, and Tom didn't want to continue in the fight, so the rematch is very interesting.
Like him or not, Aspinall is the biggest talent of the division today. Throwing him under the bus like that seems like, at the very least, bad business. And the heavyweight champion has already begun voicing his issues with Dana White.
Slightly disappointing because he hadn't spoke to me. He hadn't give any he was already giving updates on my health, and he had no idea what had gone on. Yes, so disappointing, mate. Disappointing.
The notion of it being framed as Tom didn't want to continue, as opposed to he got poked in the eye, he couldn't see, he can't get that stuff. That phrase, the way that picture was painted, in the moment you're in the hospital, you're hearing this, you're seeing this, and how did that sit with you?
I was very disappointed. Yeah, very disappointed.
The situation becomes more glaring when we note that Aspinall has only a couple of fights left on his contract, and his own father hinted that Tom might try his hand at the Ngannou path.
I think if you get into that top percentage of the sport, the UFC do not pay anywhere near as much as the boxing does.
If the same were to happen, the UFC could find itself watching another heavyweight star walk away, leaving an already weak division in total shambles. To understand the chaos, you have to see why heavyweight has struggled to stay relevant. Ultimately, the truth is that the UFC's business model sort of prevents it from consistently getting new talent at the weight class. You see, there is a great demand for high-performing 6-foot-something athletes in other sports, be it boxing, basketball, or hockey. All of them tend to pay better. But none of them require you to stand there and get punched in the face by Derek Lewis. Tyson Fury made close to $147 million in 2024 alone. Tom Aspinall will likely never make that much in his entire career. Even at lower levels, the comparison is absurd. The minimum salary for an NBA rookie is north of $1.2 million a year. In the NFL, it's around $800,000. Meanwhile, a fighter coming to the UFC after years of grinding at the regional level for peanuts would be lucky to earn over $150,000 per fight.
I don't understand what the point is of like crushing all of your competitors, having all the money in the world, and you're underbidding people who you desperately need. It can't be both. It can't be both. Like, this is a division that's important to us, but we're just not willing to invest in it because we have these demands that we put on ourselves, and we don't want to like pay guys a bunch of money.
Perhaps this harsh competition and the lack of investment by the organization have led to the wasteland that is the current UFC division. The weight class is as top-heavy as it has ever been. Below the top 5, we seem to only have one-dimensional fighters, journeymen who made a career out of a puncher's chance, and athletes who are visually out of shape and seem to get gassed within minutes.
Joe Rogan talked about the heavyweight class and how helpful Gable Steveson specifically could be to the heavyweight class because it's very thin right now. That's true. And then as a wrestler, I can see it as even thinner because we do not have a single NCAA champion under contract. Now I'm using, in fact, here, let's back off of that. We don't have a single NCAA All-American under contract. Generally, we would have world team members and Olympians. We would have world medalists and Olympic medalists. Generally, we would have Olympic champions. We do not even have an All-American.
The talent disparity from only a few years ago is also glaring. Back in the day, we used to have former champions like Arlovsky and Frank Mir at the lower top 10. Today, we have guys like Tovasa and Derek Lewis holding spots despite seeing massive win streaks. Jailton Almeida was ranked number 8, and he just got cut because the guy simply refused to fight.
But the problem gets magnified when you realize they don't want to sign Francis Ngannou. and they tried to sign Rico, but it appears that they didn't offer him enough money, so he went to go box instead.
And much, if not all of it, is the UFC's own undoing. The promotion had several chances to get it right. From letting Ngannou go, to just giving away the division to Jon Jones for 2 years, to now throwing its current champion under the bus, the UFC has repeatedly chosen short-term control over long-term health of the division. Fixing heavyweight would involve investing in young talent across the world, like college wrestlers in the US, European kickboxers, etc. But that would require the UFC to actually pay these athletes what they're worth. And based on everything we've seen, that's not happening anytime soon. So instead, we're left watching a division that's a shell of its former self.